Elias began noticing subtle, unsettling shifts in his bedroom each morning, like a glass displaced or a heavy wooden chair rotated, that he initially dismissed as simple, harmless bouts of sleepwalking. Driven by a mounting sense of unease, he installed a digital camera to monitor his nights. The recordings revealed a terrifying truth. At exactly 3:17 a.m., his bedroom door would creak open, yet no one entered the room, leaving the threshold empty and framed by the dark hallway. Instead, a sentient, crawling darkness would seep from the shadows, stretching across the cold floorboards, moving with a deliberate, liquid grace, to hover just inches from his peaceful, sleeping head. Despite his desperate rationalization of these events as mere technical glitches, the strange phenomenon escalated quickly. By the second night, his own body betrayed him in ways he could not possibly fathom. While he remained sound asleep, his physical form sat up, tilted its head, and whispered to the empty air, with a wide, unnatural smile that was clearly not his own face. The darkness, now a distinct, elongated silhouette, stood watch over him with a predatory, focused intensity. This marked the beginning of a parasitic invasion that Elias was now desperate to document fully. He watched the playback with trembling hands, his heart hammering against his ribs like a bird. The shadow seemed to pulse with a life of its own, feeding on his very essence. Every detail on the screen confirmed that he was no longer the master of his room. He felt a cold draft ripple through the air, though the windows remained tightly sealed shut. His reflection in the darkened monitor screen looked gaunt, pale, and utterly drained of all vitality. The camera lens captured the way the darkness coiled around his limbs like thick, oily smoke. He tried to scream, but his voice was trapped deep within his own paralyzed, sleeping throat. The silhouette leaned closer, its form shifting into something that resembled a distorted, elongated human shape. Elias realized with growing horror that the entity was not just watching him, but claiming him. The room felt smaller, suffocating under the weight of the encroaching, unnatural presence that filled it. He clutched the camera remote, his knuckles turning white as he replayed the footage once more. The smile on his sleeping face grew wider, stretching the skin until it looked painfully tight. He knew he had to stay awake, to fight the pull of the encroaching, heavy slumber. But the darkness whispered promises of oblivion, a siren song that beckoned him into the void. He recorded his own frantic notes, his voice shaking as he described the impossible, shifting shadows. The camera light blinked a steady, rhythmic red, the only witness to his slow, inevitable undoing. He felt the entity's cold touch brush against his mind, a sensation like needles of ice. The bedroom door remained locked, yet the darkness moved through the wood as if it existed. He was trapped in a cycle of observation, documenting the very thing that was consuming him. The shadow detached itself from the wall, growing taller until it scraped against the high ceiling. Elias felt his consciousness fraying at the edges, pulled apart by the entity's relentless psychic pressure. He looked at the clock, the numbers glowing in the dark, counting down to his end. The camera captured the exact moment his eyes snapped open, revealing pupils dilated into black pits. He was not awake, yet he was moving, his body controlled by the shadow's dark will. The entity gestured toward the camera, its long, spindly fingers pointing directly at the recording lens. Elias watched his own hand reach out, a gesture of mockery directed at his own fear. The room became a stage for a performance he did not choose to act in tonight. He felt the entity's thoughts merging with his own, a flood of ancient, cold, alien memories. The camera recorded the silence, a heavy, oppressive weight that seemed to vibrate in the air. He was a passenger in his own skin, watching the horror unfold from a distant place. The shadow began to weave patterns on the floor, symbols that burned into the old wood. Elias tried to blink, but his eyelids were held open by an invisible, relentless force tonight. The recording showed the room distorting, the walls bending inward as if the space were collapsing. He realized the camera was the only thing keeping him tethered to his own fading reality. The entity leaned down, whispering secrets into his ear that made his very soul recoil back. He saw his own reflection in the mirror, but the face looking back was not his. It was a mask of malice, a vessel for the darkness that had finally found its host. The camera continued to run, documenting the slow, agonizing erasure of his own true identity now. He felt the last remnants of his will slipping away into the dark, hungry, endless abyss. The shadow enveloped him completely, a shroud of velvet night that hid him from the world. He was no longer Elias, but a hollow shell waiting for the final, dark transformation tonight. The camera lens focused on the empty bed, where his body lay still and perfectly composed. The darkness retreated into the corners, waiting for the dawn to bring the final cruel act. He was gone, yet his body remained, a silent monument to the parasitic horror within him. The recording light flickered, a dying star in the vast, suffocating gloom of the bedroom space. He was lost to the shadows, a victim of the unseen guest that claimed his life. The camera kept recording, capturing the stillness of a room that was now entirely, terrifyingly empty. As the third night descended, the climax of the haunting unfolded with chilling and absolute precision. Despite the bedroom door being firmly locked, the camera captured a presence already inside the room. It clung to Elias's back like a viscous shadow made flesh, pulsating with a rhythmic, dark energy. Elias stirred in his sleep, his movements jerky and unnatural as the entity tightened its cold grip. When he finally spoke, his voice was no longer his own, resonating with a hollow, metallic timbre. He turned his head slowly toward the camera lens to deliver a haunting and deeply personal warning. His eyes were wide, reflecting the darkness, as he whispered, "Do not watch the rest of this." The footage then abruptly cut to 6 hours of an empty, locked room, showing no movement. There were no signs of any struggle, nor were there any indications of a forced exit. The stillness of the room was absolute, a suffocating silence captured by the unblinking digital eye. When the police finally broke down the door the following morning, they found the room vacant. The space was completely devoid of any trace of Elias, as if he had simply vanished. The only evidence remaining was the camera, still recording the silent, empty space of the bedroom. As the investigators reviewed the final frames, they realized the darkness had not actually left them. It had simply integrated into the very fabric of the room, waiting for the next observer. The shadows in the corners seemed to lengthen, stretching toward the officers with a predatory, quiet intent. Every detail of the room felt heavy, charged with the lingering residue of the parasitic, dark invasion. The lead investigator felt a sudden chill, a prickling sensation along his neck that defied logical explanation. He looked at the wall, wondering if the darkness was watching him from within the peeling paint. The camera continued to hum, its red light blinking like a heartbeat in the dim morning air. No one dared to speak, for the atmosphere was thick with the weight of the unseen guest. They searched under the bed and inside the closet, but found nothing but dust and old memories. Elias was gone, leaving behind only the terrifying digital record of his own final, stolen moments. The darkness remained, a silent sentinel coiled within the walls, patient and hungry for a new host. The investigators finally turned off the camera, but the feeling of being watched never truly faded away. They left the apartment, locking the door behind them, yet the room felt alive with hidden intent. Outside, the city continued its bustle, oblivious to the ancient horror now dwelling in that small room. The camera sat on the desk, a silent witness to a truth that no one could ever explain. Each frame of the footage contained a piece of the shadow, a fragment of the dark entity. It was a trap, a digital doorway that allowed the darkness to spread its influence further afield. The investigators would soon find themselves haunted, the same way Elias had been in his sleep. The cycle had begun anew, fueled by their curiosity and the lingering presence of the unseen guest. As night fell again, the room grew cold, the temperature dropping until breath misted in the air. The shadows began to dance, detaching themselves from the furniture to pool on the hardwood floor. They were waiting for the next person to dare look into the lens of the abandoned camera. The darkness was patient, for it had all the time in the world to find its prey. It had integrated into the walls, the floorboards, and the very air that filled the empty room. Every corner held a secret, every shadow a potential threat to those who dared to enter here. The camera light flickered once, a final gasp of power before the battery finally died out completely. In the sudden darkness, the entity stirred, stretching its elongated form across the center of the room. It was no longer just a guest. It was the master of this quiet, forgotten, and lonely place. The police report would eventually label the case as a missing person, a mystery without a solution. But those who touched the evidence would know the truth, feeling the cold touch of the shadow. The parasitic invasion was complete, and the darkness was ready to expand its reach once again tonight. It moved with a fluid grace, sliding beneath the door to find the next unsuspecting, tired soul. The city was vast, and there were so many people sleeping, so many minds to slowly consume. The haunting was not an end, but a beginning of a long, dark night for the world. Elias was the first, but he would certainly not be the last to face the unseen guest. The room remained a hollow shell, while the darkness ventured out into the streets of the city. It moved through the alleys, a whisper of smoke in the wind, searching for a new home. The camera lay forgotten, its memory card holding the proof that no one would ever believe now. The truth was buried in the static, waiting for someone to play the footage one more time. And when they did, the darkness would be there, waiting to greet them with a cold smile. The cycle of the parasitic invasion continued, silent and relentless, beneath the gaze of the pale moon. No one was safe from the shadow that lived between the seconds and the frames of life. It was the ultimate predator, existing in the spaces where light could not reach or ever touch. As the sun rose, the darkness retreated, hiding in the shadows of the morning light once again. The world moved on, unaware of the horror that had been unleashed by a simple, curious camera. The unseen guest was out there, moving through the crowd, looking for a place to rest tonight. The story of Elias was over, but the nightmare of the darkness had only just begun today.